Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katie.
I'm Varsha.
And I'm Lilybeth, and today we will be sharing our mid-year status report for our capstone project, The True Cost of Passive House, Making a Business Case for Multifamily Affordable Passive House. So we're going to review our project objective, go over our research to date, discuss proposed project deliverables, and conclude with next steps for the summer and the fall semester. So New York is a progressive climate leader that is dedicated to reducing greenhouse gas emissions within the building sector. New York also has an affordable housing crisis, and for many years there has been this misconception that green building is too expensive and not viable for affordable housing. But research and data shows that many of the goals of green and affordable housing are aligned, and passive house in particular meets many of these goals. The main barrier to underwriting affordable housing projects built to passive house standards is the lack of available data on cost savings. And we've come to realize that we are dealing with a classic chicken and egg situation, because lenders won't underwrite passive house affordable housing projects because there isn't enough data to support the cost savings, but there isn't enough data to support the cost savings from passive house affordable housing projects because lenders aren't underwriting them. So with this project, we essentially want to bridge the data gap by collecting and organizing the data in hopes to support the underwriting process and convince lenders that passive house buildings are worth the investment. And just for some quick context as to what is passive house is a standard for building energy reduction that is guided by a set of principles aimed to limit the transfer of heat between interior and exterior of a building, which can save up to 75% in energy savings when compared to traditional buildings. Some of the main passive house principles include air tightness, continuous insulation, high performance doors and windows, amongst others. And passive house is not a new concept. It's been around since the 70s, but it has only really begun to gain traction in the US in the recent years. In January, we were introduced to professionals from the following organizations. So the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, the Community Preservation Corporation, which is a nonprofit that finances affordable housing and community revitalization projects, Bright Power Incorporation, a company that specializes in improving building energy performance, and Stephen Winter Associates, which also specializes in building efficiency and has collaborated on a number of passive house projects. So these groups all work together during phase one of the project. And phase one consisted of the phase one team identifying multifamily passive house projects to collect data from. In total, they were able to identify 14 newly constructed passive house properties with 12 months of operating data, but they were only really able to deeply analyze 6. So when they started putting together their white paper to capture all of the data and research, they realized that the project needed to be further developed into a phase 2 component, which is where we come in. So the whole first semester was really dedicated to getting the capstone team, which is us, to really get up to speed on what happened in phase 1 and figuring out where we would be instrumental in pushing for phase 2. We explored some potential new directions, but ultimately decided that the priority was to address the problem of the data gap by gathering and collecting as much data from as many passive house multifamily projects as possible. And something that was important to us was that whatever we decided to do with this project, we wanted the deliverables to be accessible and useful to a multitude of audiences, not just lenders and underwriters. And now Katie's gonna talk about some of our research.
Okay, so throughout the semester, we conducted a thorough literature review in order to learn as much as possible about passive house. We reviewed all the phase 1 materials shared with us, including the phase 1 white paper and case studies such as Beach Green Dunes, Mennonite United, and Cornell Tech. We were able to tour a newly constructed multifamily passive house in Chelsea called Flow, which gave us an up-close look to be able to experience the benefits of this kind of building. CPC hosted an underwriting seminar for us, where we learned the basics of underwriting, which at a basic level is the process of loaning funds for building developments. CPC also connected us with another capstone group at Columbia University who were investigating the barriers to financing energy efficiency. And not surprisingly, the largest barrier they found was the lack of available data to support savings from energy efficiency. So this is an example of some of the compiled graphs that the phase 1 white paper had, which shows passive house energy savings compared to baseline buildings. And from the team, we learned that the ability to underwrite a portion of that energy savings from high performance buildings is needed for affordable housing projects to be able to access private debt for the additional cost and reduce the need for public subsidy dollars. So we realized that the most important part of this project is data collection. So we decided to put together a user-friendly survey through Google Forms. And we went through several rounds of edits on the form, receiving feedback from the team along the way. We wanted to keep it short enough that we could actually receive submissions, but if we actually had people sit down and fill it out, it was important that we captured all the data that we needed. So we settled on collecting basic information, design and cost data, energy performance data, and a few qualitative questions. So another question that came up was, how exactly are people going to share their energy usage data with us? So we discussed, and we figured the best way was to share their property profiles with us in the Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool. So we created a Portfolio Manager account, and so that people can share it directly with us. And for outreach strategy in general, our plan is to start small with a local net of builders and owners to fill out the survey and provide feedback for us, and then we're going to cast a wider net. And then Varsha is going to discuss the deliverables.
So as we mentioned earlier, this information be very valuable, and we wanted to be easily accessible to the public. We discussed potential deliverables and came up with the following. We decided that the best thing to do with the data to be collected is to host it on an organized, user-friendly website. Having an online presence is also critical for establishing legitimacy these days. So we are in the early stages of developing a website via the CUNY Academic Commons. The website will have a brief description of the project's purpose and intention. It will also include a link to the survey for whoever wants to share their project details. The website will also contain pages showcasing the properties we receive data for. There will also be a page dedicated to sharing data with us via the Portfolio Manager, and the instructions will be put up on that account, on how to set up the account. As for our next step, the majority of this semester was really spent on preparing for the outreach and data collection for phase 2. Over the summer and part of the next semester, we will focus on reaching out to relevant organizations and individuals to collect the data on passive house projects. The survey will also be blasted out during the North American Passive House Network Conference to help reach out a larger audience. We also want to use this time to fill in any gaps there might be in the data collected during the phase 1, if required, to ensure that we have all the information in the same format. We want this database to eventually include more climate zones within the United States. After collecting our data from the survey, the next major step would be to organize the survey results into a usable, readable data and then present it in the most efficient and user-friendly way possible. This is where the website development will come into play. We believe a map identifying the locations of the projects we receive data for will serve as a great visual representation of the volume of projects available. The map will provide a quick visual aid to lenders, letting them know that there are in fact a decent number of completed multifamily passive house projects, and all the information can be accessed in one place. We think that this project can be expanded on in the future to host passive house data for a wider range of building typologies. In conclusion, we want to say that this is going to be, we are going to have like a few busy next few months, and we are really excited to get started. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, team. So Jen, since you have seen this presentation before, it's okay, I'm going to defer to Kevin for his comments and questions.
Awesome.
Very good. I'm glad to hear you're collecting data. That's one of the things that makes me happy. I mean, I'm not totally clear how much the ownership of these differs across different parts of the US? I mean, I know you're looking at multifamily house, but to what extent, how much of the utility savings are to the landlord and how much are to the individual tenants? And that's, yeah.
And we're sort of capturing that distinguishment, and I think they were capturing it too. They were in the phase 1 data, so that's kind of part of the survey, is finding out who pays for what in the building. And I think, then when we have data, we'll step back and be able to sort of draw conclusions based on that.
And now some of the point for the landlord is the kind of sex appeal of building this very green house, and presumably it's higher sales prices for the units. Do you have any measure of that? Or I don't even know how you would, but.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a measure of that. But yeah, that's a fair point. But hopefully people will still make passive houses affordable. I don't know.
I'm going to jump in there, Kevin, because that's actually a really interesting point. And since we're coming at this from the affordable housing side, where the sex appeal in a housing market like we have is not critical. But it's not inconceivable to add this to the survey to support the value of passive house outside of the affordable housing world. And it would be really easy to just keep that, add that to our research.
If I can just say, this is a very nicely packaged, well-organized presentation and a really interesting and important bit of research. I just wanted a little bit more clarity on the kind of data that you're collecting, and
Right.
Are you looking at different fuel sources, or just a little bit more information about what is being monitored?
Yeah, so there's so overall building data, the type of heating and cooling that they have, if it's sub-metered or master metered, okay. Basically all of the components of the building, and then we're also getting the energy data, hopefully through the Energy Star portfolio manager.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So it's really comprehensive energy data. There's no
yeah, energy and cost data.
Yeah. And cost. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Godspeed.
Thank you.
And I'm at a challenging time, right? Because
yeah,
energy costs are completely no matter what you're doing, it's really
right. Very different right now. Yeah.
Yeah.